it says on the slide, this is going to be our first plenary speaker, Naoko Taguchi from Northern Arizona University. A few words first. I've had the honor to meet and work with a lot of people, and I've made a lot of friendships through this organization, JALT, and my time in the teaching community. Recently, I made a new friend. His name is Kenzo. He's from Mongolia, and he organized quite a few Mongolian education teachers to come to the conference. And maybe when I met him, I didn't know, like, I wonder how fruitful this relationship is going to be, friendship, etc. But yeah, we've met each other at other conferences and we talk and etc. I think that's an amazing thing, and it's something that I cherish, making new friends and seeing, wow, what's going to come of this. I say this because that's how I see my relationship with Naoko. I met her many, many years ago while I was working at Akita International University, and she was doing a research project on pragmatics there, and I offered, well, she was asking if anyone can help, and I said, I raised my hand, I'll help you do this thing, you know, transcribing tape scripts and all this stuff. I was like, wow, okay, this is great. I'm down in the trenches doing research, doing this, you know. And but little did I know that I would be still in contact with her so many years later, and we have kept in touch and exchanged messages and talked, and when she was working at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and now she's working at Northern Arizona University, and now she's here at JALT. And through all those years, we've kept in touch, and yeah, our relationship has gone from researcher to research assistant to friends and colleagues. And I love that. That's a really amazing thing. Did I know that all the way back then in those years? I thought, you know, do this research thing, know some stuff, get to know norming, whatever that was back at the time. Now I know what it is, obviously. But now, yeah, we're sitting here at this great event, JALT's 50th birthday, and Naoko's gonna kick off the show. So that's just to go to show, yeah, you never know what's gonna happen later in the future there. So cultivate those relationships and keep them dear. And that's what I really want to say about Naoko, how much I really do feel that towards her, and I'm looking forward to hearing her talk. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, so I'm just going to get right to it and let Naoko do what she does best. So, without further ado, it's an honor, absolute honor for me to introduce my friend, colleague, Naoko Taguchi. Give a big hand. All right. You're welcome. Here's another bottle of water if you need some. Oh, you just need that.
Thank you for your thoughtful introduction. And it's true that our friendship has grown so long. I met Dwayne when I was at Akita International University. So that was my first job after I got my PhD at Northern Arizona University. And he helped me greatly with the first major research project I did after my PhD. And so many years, but there's one thing we haven't done together, which is running. And Dwayne and I love running, and I'm a trail runner in Arizona. And I hope that someday, maybe we can share some miles somewhere. Okay. So this is my absolute pleasure and honor to be invited to speak at the JALT National Conference. And I'd like to thank the conference chair, Professor Gabriela Schmidt, and of course, Wayne Malcolm, and the entire conference team for giving me this amazing opportunity. So personally, speaking at the JALT means a lot to me because the very first paper I published in academic journal was with JALT journal. So it was more than 25 years ago. I was a PhD student at Northern Arizona University, and I submitted my term paper looking at the ESL students' use of listening strategies. And I still remember the very extensive critical comments I received from anonymous reviewers. So coping with the review process was my very first professional experience as a PhD student. And because of this, JALT has a special place for my career development. And I'm very happy to be here attending this conference and contributing to this wonderful program in my most humble and small way. So for today's talk, I will focus on intercultural competence in language education. So as we all know, intercultural competence is one of the critical skill and knowledge areas in the current globalized society. And so language education should focus on intercultural development as part of the pedagogical goals. But how to develop these two areas together, intercultural and language competence, has been the current challenge. And I would like to address this challenge drawing on my recent research findings looking at the Japanese students' intercultural development in an EMI setting. So this is an outline of my talk, which has 3 sections. In the first section, I will talk about what presents an overview of intercultural competence. So I'll be asking questions like, what is intercultural competence? Well, what does it mean to be interculturally competent in the current society? And what the elements and traits are involved in this construct? Then, in the second part, I will illustrate EMI, English medium instruction, particularly English medium universities in Japan as a site for intercultural development. And then in the final part of my talk, I will present empirical evidence for this by sharing my recent findings looking at the development of intercultural communicative competence among Japanese students in an EMI institution in Japan. So let's start with the first part, intercultural competence, constructs, and definitions. So I've been looking at this construct for over the last decade or so, doing several research. And in my view, this is a really interesting construct because of its interdisciplinary nature. So not just language educators or applied linguists are interested in this construct. People in other disciplines are all talking about this construct. So for example, scholars in the field of psychology and personality studies and communication studies, global leadership, global business, international education. So these fields are really different from each other, but they all talk about and interested in this same construct, intercultural competence. And because of this interdisciplinary nature, we have different terminologies and labels attached to this construct. So for example, some people call it as global competence. Ethno-relativity is another term. Cross-cultural adaptation. Intercultural sensitivity, cross-cultural awareness, and multicultural competence. So all these terms have been used interchangeably to refer to this same construct. And because of these diverse labels and terminologies, we have diverse definitions of intercultural competence. And Dierdorf, 2006, did a very useful study in the field. She used the Delphi methods and did interviews and surveys with 23 leading scholars in the field of intercultural communication to look at what they consider when they talk about the intercultural competence. And this is the most agreed upon definition among those 23 scholars. Intercultural competence involves ability to communicate effectively and appropriately in intercultural situations based on one's intercultural knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So when I look at this definition and look at other similar constructs like communicative competence or second language proficiency, I can point out at least two distinct characteristics of intercultural competence. One is that intercultural competence is situated in intercultural communication. So it's not about any kinds of interaction or communication. Specifically, it's about the communication among people coming from different cultures using shared language. And another characteristic is that intercultural competence draws on intercultural knowledge, skills, traits, and attitudes. So it goes beyond those linguistics-specific knowledge and skills, extending to intercultural-specific knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So this is one representative definition. And when it comes to the models and the frameworks of intercultural competence, we have many, many different models. Leon et al. Did a synthesis review in 2014, and they identified 30 different models and frameworks encompassing 300 different constructs. So this means that there are 300 sub-constructs or elements that characterize intercultural competence. So this number, 300, sounds very overwhelming, but they provided a useful illustration of these constructs. So when they compared the 30 different models, and they found that the constructs they are talking about fall into one of these components: traits, attitudes, and capabilities. So traits means personal characteristics or personality qualities that determine a pattern of behaviors. And certain traits are considered underlining intercultural competence. So those traits of, for example, flexibility, open-mindedness, empathy, risk-taking, curiosity, and interest. So these traits support our intercultural competence and communication. Attitudes refers to the way of looking at our own culture in relation to others. So some attitudes like ethno-relative attitudes, looking at our own culture as one of many, is considered beneficial for intercultural communication, as opposed to other attitudes like ethnocentric attitudes. And finally, capabilities is probably the area where language teachers and applied linguists are most interested in, because this area involves language knowledge and skills that support intercultural communication, effective intercultural communication. And these three areas, traits, attitudes, and capabilities, are also reflected in this famous model of intercultural communicative competence, or ICC, originally proposed by Byram. So Byram, 2012, proposed this concept of intercultural speakers and emphasized that successful intercultural speakers possess these two types of competence, intercultural and communicative competence. And intercultural competence involves those personality traits and attitudes that help us engage in intercultural differences, while communicative competence involves those linguistics knowledge and skills for effective intercultural communication. So language education ideally should nurture these two types of competence to develop students' abilities to function effectively in the current international society. So this leads to the second part of my talk. And here, I will focus on EMI as one of such educational models, And I believe that EMI can support students' intercultural development for both domestic and international students. So we have also seen this rapid expansion of English taught programs or English medium programs around the globe. And this is statistics from the British Council last year. The number of EMI programs expanded or increased by 48% in the last 5 years. And this is a huge increase. And when we look at the areas where increase has happened most of the EMI programs currently exist in the European higher education area. So there are about over 20,000 programs in Europe. But East Asia came in the second, hosting 4,700 programs. And Japan is one of those countries. And along with the expansion of EMI, we have expanded the definitions of EMI. So more traditionally, people are focusing on the English proficiency development and the content knowledge as two areas, or two primary characteristics of EMI. So this is a definition by Makaro, who says that EMI involves the use of English language to teach academic subjects in countries where the first language of the majority of the population is not English. So you can see that English proficiency and the content knowledge, so these are the two primary areas of EMI. But we also have people emphasizing intercultural dimension of EMI. So this is from Murata and Ino, who says that EMI involves English medium instruction conducted in the context where English is used as a lingua franca for content learning and teaching among students and teachers from different lingua cultural backgrounds. So we can see that here, English is situated as a common resource, shared resource among people. And it's like a tool for connecting people coming from different cultural backgrounds. So EMI is an environment or a prototype ELF setting, English as a lingua franca setting, and providing an environment for people from different cultures interact through academic and social activities. So I think we can summarize EMI benefits and characteristics according to these three areas. So EMI can help develop students' academic English proficiency tied to content knowledge, so they can use English to talk about their expertise in the international society. But EMI also hosts students from different cultures, faculty and students from different cultures, providing an environment for their intercultural development. So turning to the situation in Japan, so this is something you all know better than me, who is living in the US currently. But EMI, of course, is growing in Japan as well. And because of the policies and the projects put forward by the government, initiated and promoted through the government policies and the projects. And these are some representative projects started 20 years ago. And I still remember this action plan to cultivate Japanese with English abilities. So this was a time, the time I was about to leave Japan to move to US. And I was very curious about the outcome of these policies and if they sort of sensationalize English education in Japan. And you probably have answers to this. And according to Bradford 2018, there are currently 800 universities in Japan, and 40% of them have some kind of EMI curriculum or program, and 40 universities offer complete degrees in EMI. So EMI in Japan has been the government's strategic effort for globalizing higher education. So the government and the public expect that EMI can help improve Japanese students' English abilities tied to content knowledge. But the EMI can also increase the number of international students coming to Japan to study, because they don't have to have a high-level Japanese proficiency to take classes in Japanese universities. So they can study in English and transfer their credits to their home countries. So having international students and domestic or Japanese students together on campus can help develop students' intercultural development and engagement. So along with these EMI trends in Japan, the research on EMI in Japan has also expanded. And these are just a few book-length work I have encountered recently. So edited volume by Bradford and Brown, monograph by Toh, and research monograph by Kojima and Rugg. So these books talk about policies in EMI, EMI curriculums, and also outcomes, learning outcomes of this educational model, and the challenges shared among students and faculty members, teaching and learning in EMI context. So this is just a few works, and I believe that there are many different research going on currently in Japan. But when it comes to the research on EMI, looking at the learning outcomes of students' intercultural development, surprisingly, the findings are still very limited. So we don't have so many studies actually documenting EMI outcomes from intercultural perspectives. And the findings are also mixed. So for example, Hofmeier 21 and 23 conducted a survey-based research looking into the private university which hosts a large number of international students. And she collected the survey responses from over 350 Japanese students. And she found that the students' participation in formal required activities like classes and lectures was relatively high. 80 to 90% of the students participate in those activities. But when it comes to the participation in informal, non-mandatory activities, participation dropped to 50%. And so those informal activities like extracurricular activities like club activities or shared living or language exchange program, students don't really participate. And also, the majority of the students admitted that they only interact with their Japanese peers in those activities. And they perceive very little impact on their skills and knowledge coming from those activities. So these findings show that there are intercultural learning opportunities in the EMI setting, but the students don't really take advantage of those opportunities. But so this is one of the few findings actually documenting the intercultural outcomes in EMI. And also, most of the research currently are survey-based, looking at the students' perceptions rather than their actual intercultural performance. And so Hofmeier, given this situation, says that to this date, relatively few studies have been conducted on internationalization at the home initiatives from the perspective of domestic students, including in Japan. So this leads to the last part of my talk, and empirical evidence. So my research was intended to respond to this Hofmeier's call for more research, actually documenting students' intercultural outcomes. And so this study is a small case study, so I don't claim for generalization of the findings for wider areas. But so this was the study I conducted and completed recently. And I wrote 2 papers from this project, and one of them appeared in TISO Quarterly last week. And it's open access, so I hope you take a look at the paper, and I appreciate your comments and the feedback on this. So this study was a 2-year longitudinal study tracing development of intercultural communicative competence, or ICC, among Japanese students enrolled in the EMI University in Japan. And research site was a small English medium university located in the northern part of Japan. And the school is a small school, but presents a very intimate, friendly, multicultural, multilingual environment. And there are 800 students in this university, undergraduate students, and 75% of them are Japanese students, while the remaining 25 are international students. And one of the characteristics of this university is that the school encourages or promotes co-living among Japanese and international students on campus. So they arrange dormitory or shared housing and apartments so they can live together on campus. And Japanese students have a study abroad requirement. And during their second or third year, they transfer to one of the 200 partner institutions spread over 51 countries. So essentially, those countries send the international students to this campus. So it's like an exchange program. And Japanese students, they spend a semester or a year in those partner institutions and return to the EMI campus to finish their degrees. And participants were 37 Japanese students. And this was a longitudinal study, so unfortunately, there was some attrition. When I started the study in spring of 2022, I had 62 participants, but gradually number became smaller, and the last cohort was 37 students. But I consider these students typical Japanese students. They finished their high school in Japan and came to the EMI institution to study. And they came from all over Japan, representing 31 prefectures. And at the beginning of the study, 38% of the students reported living with English-speaking housemates. So these participants completed the assessment of ICC, which was the original instrument I developed based on this framework of intercultural speakers. So the task I designed intended to tap upon intercultural and communicative competence together. And for this task, I focused on intercultural conflict mediation, because the conflict or disagreement often happens among people coming from different countries because of different cultural norms, expectations, and experience. So ability to mediate conflict successfully draws on some of the key areas of intercultural competence. So for one, we need a cultural knowledge. So we need to know where those people are from, what the kind of experiences they have, and their perspectives towards the problem they're having. And we also need attentive listening skills. So we need to listen to their point of view using the skill of empathy and perspective taking. And finally, linguistic skills or communication skills is critical, because the task is to mediate a conflict towards a solution between those people who are in conflict. So effective communication skill is an important area. So to tap on these areas, the task I designed had 2 stages. In the first stage, students received a 1-page document written in English, illustrating the conflict situations between 2 people coming from different cultures. And I will talk about this situation later, but the situation was developed based on the needs analysis in the target institution. So students read about the people's cultural background, their perspectives, and their perspective towards a problem. And after reading the situation, they were asked to give advice to those two people who are in conflict in writing. So basically, those writing samples served as an element to look at their ICC development. And I gave this task 3 times over a 2-year period. And I designed 2 different tasks and alternated the tasks over time to avoid practice effect coming from doing the same task again and again. So these are the situations for the task. So first task, time 1. The situation is between German student and the Japanese student. And they're having a disagreement about their class participation. So German students want to have an active group discussion. But the Japanese students, they don't talk so much and they remain silent in the group discussion. So they're having a disagreement about this issue. Time 2 task conflict was between American student and Japanese student about the project meeting in the same class they are taking. So American student wants to work more independently, and so they sometimes late for the meeting, but the Japanese students wants to have everybody on time and want to work all the time together for this project. And time 3, the conflict scenario, I reused that scenario from time 1. So as I said, these situations were based on the needs analysis. So I gave a survey to 38 Japanese students and international students on campus. And I asked them to report their episodes of conflict or disagreement they have experienced on campus. And based on their response, I selected the one which was more commonly reported by the students. So the participants presented the advice to people who are in conflict. And this writing sample, advice giving, was evaluated using a 4-point scale encompassing these 4 areas: clarity, appropriateness, empathy, and solution. Clarity and appropriateness addressed linguistics or communicative dimensions of ICC. So for clarity, we looked at the students' use of grammar, vocabulary, and the organization of the writing samples. And appropriateness, we addressed the pragmatics dimension because the task involved giving advice to somebody. So we looked at the students' manner of advice giving for politeness and directness levels. Empathy and the solution addressed intercultural dimensions of the ICC. So empathy, we looked at the students' use of empathetic expressions, and if they were able to recognize both parties' perspectives rather than just one person's perspective. And solution, we looked at the quality of a solution students presented in the writing sample. If they presented a clear and concrete solution that can benefit both parties, not just one person. So 2 raters, speakers of English with applied linguistics background, evaluated all the samples with a kappa agreement of 0.83. And the samples which received large discrepancies were discussed until they reached the agreement. So this is a data collection procedure. Time 1, students completed this task when they just started their study in the EMI institution. So those students were all in the EAP program, English for academic purposes, and studying English intensively. And second time was 1 year later. And students were mostly in the general education programs or taking classes in their major. And time 3 was 2 years later. And in this period, half of the students went to study abroad as part of the requirement from the university. And other half remained in EMI, so they were pre-study abroad cohort. And I will talk about this study abroad thing later when I present my findings. So with a limited time I have, I want to go through some of the major findings from this project. And first of all, so this is a box plots illustrating the mean score of students' conflict mediation task. So the score range was from 4 to 16, and you can see that the students' mean score gradually increased from time 1, 2, and 3. And I did a linear mixed effect model with time as a fixed effect and the participant as random effect. And there was a significant impact of time. So this means that there was a significant increase in students' total conflict mediation task scores after controlling for participant variable. So overall, students' ICC, as measured with this one task, conflict mediation increased over a period of 2 years. And then I did a post hoc analysis looking at the gains across these 4 dimensions of ICC. And during the students' first year, from time 1 to 2, significant gains were found only in the linguistics dimensions. So clarity and appropriateness showed a significant increase with Cohen's D 0.6 to 0.7. But the intercultural dimensions showed no significant gains. So they didn't improve at all in these 2 areas. However, in the second year, from time 2 to 3, significant gains were found in all 4 dimensions. So these findings show that students develop faster with linguistics aspects, and their gains in the intercultural dimensions, as measured in this task, lag behind the development. So they show slow development in the intercultural dimensions. And this could be because in the first year, students were enrolled in the EAP program and focusing on developing their academic English proficiency. And they were taking classes all with their Japanese peers. And from second year, they started taking more classes with international students. And so that might have contributed to the findings. And another analysis I did was I focused on time 2 to 3, second year, looking at the study abroad effect. So as I said before, during this time period, 18 students out of 37 went to study abroad and spent, in average, 6.4 months in a study abroad context. And those study abroad destinations varied across the students, over 10 different countries. But at the time of data collection, they had spent in average about 6 months. So study abroad effect, so I compared the gains between the study abroad students and the pre-study abroad EMI cohort, because study abroad is often talked about ideal place for intercultural development. And I did a linear mixed effect model with fixed effect was time and the study abroad experience, and the random effect was participants. And interestingly, study abroad showed no significant main effect on students' gains in intercultural communicative competence, which is conflict mediation task scores. And there was no interaction effect of time and the study abroad with Cohen's D of 0.2. So these findings show that having a study abroad experience was not particularly beneficial for students' gains in conflict mediation task scores. So staying at the home in an EMI institution alone was equally beneficial to the gains in conflict mediation task scores. So these findings made me wonder what the kind of intercultural experience students have on this EMI university, which might have contributed to the gains in intercultural communicative competence. So I interviewed 4 participants who are all EMI cohort. Interview took place on Zoom in Japanese for 30 minutes. And I asked several questions. And one of them was opportunities for intercultural communication on campus. So do they talk to international students or international faculties who are engaged in intercultural communication? And if so, where do they get those kind of opportunities? And the other question was experience with intercultural conflict, problem, and negotiation. So do they have a conflict with each other? And if so, what the kind of conflict do they have? And where? And if they have a conflict, what's the students' approach to those situations? So this was the last main topic in the interview. So all the interviews were transcribed and analyzed thematically by coding notable themes. And in the last few slides, I will share the main findings from the interview part. So first, opportunities for intercultural communication. And there were many different kinds of opportunities in club activities or extracurricular programs, classes that they are taking with international students, the assignments they are doing together, or a project they have in group, and the shared housing and the school events like ceremonies and school festivals. So there were a variety of venues where students interact with international students on campus in an EMI setting. But when it comes to the experience with conflict, problem, disagreement, and negotiation, most of the experience happened in the shared housing situation. So, for example, before they started living together, they had to draw a room contract and decide house rules and chores, like cleaning rotation, or how to use a shared space, like a living room or bathroom. And during that process, and also after they started living together, there were many instances where they have to align their values. So the term 価値観のすり合わせ came up in the interview often from the students. So there are cultural differences in terms of what is considered appropriate or acceptable and not acceptable. So in those occasions, they have to compromise and they have to set the priorities. So for example, they decided that listening to music in the shared living room is okay, but they have to negotiate the volume of the music and also time when they listen to the music. So like setting a priority and compromising. And when conflict or disagreement actually happened between Japanese and international students, the students' attitudes were passive. The students waited until problems resolved themselves, and they didn't complain directly face-to-face. And instead, they used indirect methods like line, and they didn't complain alone. So they invited other people and complained in a group. So these passive attitudes, behind these attitudes were the students' concerns for face needs. So they didn't want to hurt others' feelings. And they didn't want to be in an awkward situation or have a bad experience. So for them, conflict was an awkward, strange, or undesirable situation or experience, and something they have to avoid. And another notable thing was that students didn't know how to express feelings and emotions in English, those situations, because those situations, confrontational situations, are very different from academic classroom situations. So they didn't know how to be polite and indirect using English. But some students tried to sort of, they used their linguistics resources to convey their requests and needs politely. So this is one interview excerpt from participant YK. She says that when my housemate was listening to loud music, using line, I said to her something like, I hear your music at night. but I would appreciate it if you can lower the volume a little bit. I thought saying just that might sound unfriendly, so I added, let's go out to eat sometime, and try not to be too one-sided. So she used this positive politeness strategy, inviting somebody out to dinner after making a complaint to minimize potential face threat in complaint. So there were some instances like this, but overall, students were feeling anxiety over those situations. And they were concerned about the others' perceptions and concerned about the communicative success. So they kept wondering, do they understand what I really want to say? Or what if they take it in the wrong way because of my linguistics manner? So they were concerned about that. And this is one student excerpt. I don't have any big problems for now, but when something serious happens, I'm worried if I can convey my intentions clearly, my complaint and request for change. I don't have much experience with that. When such a situation occurs, I'm not sure if we can discuss the issue comfortably. So this shows the students' anxiety over these situations they have to confront and convey their request. So this is just a preliminary small case study, the findings. But based on this, I want to talk about intercultural learning. Is it really possible in an EMI institution in Japan? And I think there are both opportunities and challenges. For opportunities, I think that intercultural communicative competence, or ICC, can develop naturally over time without the instruction, as we found in the significant gains found in their conflict mediation task scores. And the ICC development can be promoted on campus alone because we didn't see any significant impact of study abroad experience. So EMI institution was sufficient for this. And EMI campus can provide opportunities for intercultural communication and negotiation, as we found in the students' interview data. However, there are some challenges as well. For one, the linguistics and the intercultural dimensions of ICC may not develop in a parallel manner. So intercultural dimensions lag defined in their development. So the challenge is how to promote intercultural resources students can use for intercultural communication. And the students may feel unequipped with linguistics resources for situations involving intercultural negotiations, as we found in their anxiety expressed during the interviews. So I want to conclude my talk with a few directions for the future research. So as I said, this is just a preliminary study, and I want to see more studies like that coming out from Japan. And we should commit to a formal, objective, and long-term assessment of students' ICC across different EMI contexts. So we should go beyond the expectations of English proficiency and the content knowledge, and extend our expectations to students' intercultural development, and have to develop means to objectively assess students' intercultural competence. And the assessment of ICC should be theoretically grounded and locally situated. So the assessment task, we should draw on the existing literature on what intercultural competence is and what's involved, and design the task accordingly and adjust it according to the local situations. And finally, we can promote learning of linguistics and intercultural resources in an EMI environment so students can maximize their opportunities and experience in EMI and grow as true intercultural speakers. So this is all I have today, and thank you so much for listening. And I look forward to talking to many of you throughout this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for. You always went away. Thank you very much for your talk. Very inspiring talk, and very looking to the future. Now the conference starts with a lot of presentations. I hope you can enjoy it. I think 11 o'clock will be the first. Yeah.